what I want to talk about specifically is the language that addicts use. There's certain phrases that come up again and again, especially when you're in a relationship with somebody who's in active addiction. I want to think about the language as not random. It may feel unconscious, but it is really intentional because there is a defense structure that is taking place. And once you begin to understand the language that the addict's using, you can't unhear it. And so I want to walk through 4 phrases that I hear that are really common. The first phrase is the simple, I didn't know. I didn't know that. I didn't know I was supposed to do that. And on the surface, this sounds like a reasonable defense. You didn't tell me, you didn't let me know what your expectations were, but I want you to think about like what that's actually doing. Immediately, it erases accountability before you can even be held accountable or take accountability. The thing is, they usually did know. They knew on some level, but the I didn't know creates distance between the person and the behavior, all right? And so when I don't know, I'm distancing myself from that behavior. And it says that this action happened to you and not because of me. What they're really saying is I'm not ready to own this yet. And sometimes, which can be a little bit more painful, it means if I admit I knew it, I have to also admit that I chose to do this. The second phrase that I often hear is I'm not capable of that. This one is a little bit more insidious because it can honestly kind of sound like humility, like self-awareness, but it's actually kind of this ceiling that the addict places over the relationship and over themselves. So when they say, I'm not capable of that, what it immediately does is it shuts down the conversation before it can even begin. It preempts any asking. But what it also does is it makes the other person honestly kind of feel cruel for even wanting more. And really what it means, if we were being honest, is I don't want to try. Or I'm not willing to try. I'm not ready to make a change yet. A third phrase that I often hear is the phrase, I feel like you. Or another phrase could be like, you do that too. Now, this is a deflection dressed up as self-awareness. So I'm trying to be maybe a veiling curiosity, but when somebody says, I feel like you, immediately what I want you to think of, this isn't a feeling, it's a belief. But what they're telling you is they believe something about you, and it's typically in response to the partner communicating something that's difficult or painful to experience. And so what they're trying to do is escape that consequence by holding up kind of a fake mirror in front of you and saying, hey, I know you're saying this to me, but why don't you look at yourself first? And then what can end up happening is a betrayed partner might end up defending themselves, even though they're the ones that really brought up the issue in the first place. And what the addict is really saying is, I cannot tolerate being looked at like this right now, so I'm going to make you look at yourself instead. The last phrase that we want to talk about today is one of my favorites, which is like, I can't do this in real time. So oftentimes addicts become really self-aware and something clicks and they'll say, well, I can't do that in real time. And the hard part about this is that's actually true. There's a reality to this awareness piece and not being able to do it in real time. And that's what makes this statement really effective, because emotionally regulating is really hard. Responding in the moment is really hard for everyone. But what I can't do that in real time means often is I'm permanently exempted from your expectations that I change. I'm not going to ask to help. I'm not going to ask for help to get better. I'm not going to figure out how to change. I just want you to know that I'm not capable of this. And really what it means is the version of me you're asking for would require me to be sober and present, and I'm not ready to do that. So really what I want you to walk away with here is that these phrases aren't always conscious manipulations. However, it is the responsibility of the addict to become aware of how they use these to make them conscious, because ultimately, regardless if they're conscious or unconscious, they're responsible for the choices that they make and what they choose to communicate. And a lot of times the person saying them genuinely believes them to be true, but what's really happening is they want you to believe that it's true so that you do not hold them accountable and that they are not accountable. Understanding the function of the language of the addict, what it does in a conversation is it gives you back your footing. You stop getting lost in the argument about whether they knew, whether they are capable, whether they're just as bad, or whether you're just as bad. And you start to see the pattern. And that's where real conversation can start to happen and real recovery starts to begin. The addict will start taking accountability for their actions. They'll start to recognize the ways in which they're trying to be manipulative and control the individual across from them. And you can be more empowered to spot these things so that you don't have to do that ugly dance.